Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Happy Musicians Podcast, where it's not about getting the gig, it's about enjoying it. My name is Tanner Guss, and I'm joined this week by Jake Gold. Jake's a keyboard player living here in New Orleans, and he's a true blue-collar musician, working locally pretty much every single night of the year. He's out playing with brass bands, funk bands, singer-songwriters, jazz groups, hip-hop producers. He played cello with an orchestra. He's the minister of music for a church, and this guy even leads his own projects. He's a machine. And he's one of those people who, for whatever reason, you just can't help but brighten up when you're around him. During our conversation, we discussed the importance of musical variety, as well as the stresses of breaking into a new scene. We also talked some dodgeball, finding the moment, and Jake's patented technique for deciding whether or not you should take the gig. I so hope you enjoy, and please welcome Jake Gold. All right, Jake Gold, welcome to the Happy Musicians Podcast.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Yeah, excited to be with you. We're here in New Orleans in Jake's place. And I wanted to start by asking you about variety. Going through your bio and what your career has looked like so far, you've played with so many different kinds of groups and different projects, and it seems like variety is something that you really value.
Absolutely. Variety is everything. It keeps every gig fresh. It keeps everything exciting. I mean, if you look around the room here, I have classical music sitting over here. I got jazz sitting on this piano, different charts for different things. I think it all started for variety from my dad and his record collection. I grew up listening to a lot of Beatles and Grateful Dead, but also a lot of Mingus and Monk and Miles Davis, and also classical music and operas and stuff like that. And that was kind of my early learning of music. And then when I got to college, things started taking kind of a world music turn for me. I started listening to a lot of Indian music and African music and trying to learn about all those different types of things. And then I found out about New Orleans music and eventually gravitated down here. Although that was more circumstantial than kind of an actual decision to come learn the music. But a big selling point on New Orleans for me was the ability to learn this new style, not a new style, but a new style to me that was totally different than anything else that I was listening to. Came down here, picked up a bunch of funk gigs, a bunch of brass band gigs, the occasional trad jazz hit, and I think it's very important to stay varied in your music playing. Everything feeds into everything else.
Did you have a vision for having a career that was really diverse? Did you think, I know that having a variety of musical experience makes me happy, so I'm going to actively make that happen in my life? Or did it just seem to come together as a result of you knowing the different genres?
Yeah, probably more the latter. I have spent time in single genre environments. For example, I lived in Boston for a couple of years, and I pretty much just played reggae music, and my whole life was reggae. And after 2 years of that, I realized, man, there's so much other music to play, that just playing reggae music alone wasn't doing it for me. It wasn't fulfilling my musical life and experience. So I think I have actually taken an active pursuit to play different genres, play with different bands. I've had experiences where I play with one band for a couple of years and that's it. And to me, that's not as fulfilling or exciting as having the opportunity to play a bunch of different stuff. I think it keeps me fresher. I think it keeps you more on your toes and more constantly learning different things. And to me, that's one of the great joys of music, is that there's so much out there to pick up and so much out there to learn that you can really bounce around from gig to gig or band to band and pick up something from every body you play with, pick up something from every song you learn. Different environments make the whole thing that much more enjoyable for me.
That's really cool. I think for some people, having so much spontaneity and maybe lack of consistency can be stressful.
Mm-hmm.
But it sounds like instead for you, that's more seen as an opportunity to learn new things, which I think is a healthy way to approach that.
Yeah, totally.
It also feels like New Orleans is a very safe place to do that and experiment with different things. It's forgiving in that way, right?
I think so. I think it's very welcoming too, and very community minded. I find New Orleans to be a real place where you meet another musician who, if they play the same instrument as you, it's not an issue of like, oh man, that guy's gonna take my gigs, because there's so many gigs to be had here. Every restaurant, every club, every establishment really is an opportunity for a gig. I've played gigs in supermarkets here. That it's more of a, hey, you play this thing? Great. What's your style? Let me hear you. Cool. I like the way you do that. I do this slightly different way. But there's room for both of us to have gigs, or all of us to have gigs. And I think the space allows for a real community mindset within the music. That's not answering your question really at all, but
no, it is in a sense. Well, I think that touches on another good thing about the scene here, is that because of the lack of scarcity, there is room for everyone.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that is really healthy. And I know a lot of people can struggle with comparison. And every time you hear someone on your instrument who's amazing, you think, oh my God, like I'll never be better than them. How am I ever going to work? You don't have to worry about that as much here. But I'm curious if that's a mindset that you've ever struggled with, or not necessarily.
oh yeah. I mean, there's definitely those players that you listen to and you go, I quit. I don't want to play anymore. I don't need to play anymore. That guy has exactly everything that I could work for 50 years to sound like. And there definitely are those guys here in New Orleans, but I think that's actually part of why I moved to New Orleans. I was in Vermont for a couple of years, and I kind of felt like there was only maybe half a dozen really good keys players, and we were all kind of bouncing around between these different bands, and it felt like there was not the opportunity to be the worst guy in the city. And part of moving to New Orleans was I knew that when I got here, I was going to be one of the worst new keys players in the city. And I kind of relished that challenge and the idea of like, okay, let's see how long it takes to overcome that step of being the worst to becoming, okay, now I'm a workable player. Now I'm a working player. Now I'm working all the time. Now I can be one of those guys that I would have looked up to myself a couple of years ago, or however many years ago. But there are still those guys who are just light years ahead. And, you got to make those comparisons. You got to look at what they're doing right and pick up things here and there and notice other people and see what they're doing wrong and see, okay, I don't like the way that person does that. I'm not going to do that thing. Which I guess works in both directions. But at the same time, you got to go out there and know that there's only you. You're the only you that there is. And that if you're getting hired for gigs, it's because you're doing the work, you're sounding good, and your persona is matching the vibe of what the band wants. And I think the less you worry about, am I good enough, the easier it becomes to fit into the cut and be part of that number.
No, I agree. And you talked about the progression of your career going from being the worst and going into it relishing the idea. I'm sure it was pretty humbling and tough at first. And maybe you could talk on kind of what your mental space was like going through those levels, because it's nice to be able to look back where you're at now and think, yeah, I'm in a good place and it was a struggle, but a lot of people that are in the struggle right now might benefit from hearing what you were thinking while you were going through it.
Yeah.
And if maybe hopefully it wasn't all just a struggle? There were probably great moments along the way, and what kept you going through that?
Yeah. Let's see. Well, I started out when I got here. The gigs I was picking up were Craigslist gigs. They were terrible. I played in a bunch of really bad bands. I played in one like 80s cover band that really just was devastating and really an unhappy situation. I got out of that pretty quickly. I think my biggest hang up at that time was being really shy. I was not going out on to the gigs that I wanted to be a part of and introducing myself. I wasn't really doing that. I would go and I'd sit in the back of the room and I'd watch and I'd take notes and I'd go home and kind of think about the different things that I had picked up just from watching, but I hadn't made the kind of moves that I see a lot of people making that's much more proactive. Like, for example, when I first moved to town, the New Orleans Super Jam, which is how we know each other, which has been a great gig for me for the past year and change, and is a really open, inclusive, inviting situation. The first time I went to play that, I caught some kind of weird energy from some other person who was on the jam, and I was like, I don't want to put myself out there as much as I probably should have. And I was nervous and I was shy, and I didn't push to be known or recognized or invited into certain situations. And, I wasn't as confident in my playing as I am now. Years of playing all the time will make you feel much more confident and competent. But, at first that was a real struggle for me, was trying to get into different circles or get myself into a certain band or a certain good situation. So I kind of took the route of creating my own situation, started a band that did, I think, pretty well for a while and is still doing well, and I'm not involved with them anymore. But it was more of a act of, let's start with a bunch of people who don't have any sort of name recognition or face recognition in town, and let's see how far we can go with that, and let's try to become part of the scene through our own situation, as opposed to hopping into different trains. You know what I mean?
Yeah, using the time that you have available as an opportunity in that sense.
Right. And it was years of struggle. We did, we were busking, we were playing shows that would pay us in fried fish. We played at a strip club for a while that was, small room. Played a lot of shitty gigs, and then eventually, started gelling, started making things happen, and as a result, kind of started meeting other people who were making things happen, and kind of every gig becomes two other gigs, or can become two other gigs. Mm-hmm. And eventually end up in a place. And whether or not that's a good place, that's who can really say. But if you're making ends meet and you're musically satisfied, and, we have the job of getting to, hang out with our friends and make a bunch of noise at people.
Yeah.
And that's all that there is to it, really. Mm-hmm. We could be in cubicles or, lifting heavy shit from here to there.
Well, you have a three-pronged gig assessment tool that you use, right?
I do. I talk about this a lot, to the point of where some of my friends are really annoyed by it. But yeah, the idea that I take any gig with is based on how's the pay, how's the hang, and how's the music. And, if two of those three things are good, I say take the gig. If three of those three things are good, that's the gig that you want to keep for forever. Right now, I'm really fortunate to be in a place where all of my gigs, really, on a weekly basis, are fulfilling all three of those needs for me. Maybe not the money thing all the time, but the hang is always really good with the people that I'm playing with these days. And for the most part, the musicianship is at a very high level, and that, to me, allows you to grow as a musician. If you're surrounded by people who challenge you musically, And I would always rather play in a band where I feel like I'm the weak link, um, because that gives me something to work for. If I'm playing in a band with people that either I don't get along with or I don't think are as exciting musicians, that better be a good paying gig.
Yeah, as if one of the three pillars is really, really strong,
Sure.
you might be able to get away with it.
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
If it's like, a great tour, but you hate everybody and, the music is kind of boring and it's the same thing every night, but it's paying half your year's rent. Yeah, take that gig. You got to take that gig. You'd be a fool not to.
Yeah.
And, if your best friends are starting a band and there's no money involved, you got to take that gig too.
Yeah. No, I like that. I think that's a great way to think about it and give it some clarity. And then I think you feel like you have a bit of agency in the situation, looking at it that way.
Yeah, you get to kind of, you got to figure out some way to balance the pros and cons of any gig, and kind of consider what the gig means to you and what the gig can do for you and what you can create on that situation. And if you're not satisfied with the situation that you're in, you're going to be making shitty music. The more fun you're having, the more fun the music is, the more people respond to that. And it's this circular thing where if you see people having a great time to the music that you're creating, you start having a better time, and you're watching this whole thing kind of bubble up, and before you know it, everybody in the room, yourself included, the whole band is taken to this elevated level where everything is just awesome. When that happens, it's not an accident.
Yeah. Well, going along with that, I see a lot of people, and I know I was like this a lot in school, and I'm still trying to get away with this, is being so focused on your own playing in a musical performance situation. You're so thinking about, okay, I gotta sound good. I gotta impress people. Like you see a lot of people just looking down at their hands as they're getting through it, and you forget to be a part of the music and interact with everyone. And whenever I'm playing with you, you're always looking around, looking up, like part of the experience. And I'm curious if you've just always had that relationship with music where you're part of it in that way, kind of out of yourself, or if that's something that you've worked towards.
Well, it definitely depends on the gig too. Like on a gig with tougher material that I'm not as familiar with, I'll definitely be more focused on looking at what exactly I'm playing, or if I'm reading charts. That's another thing. We happen to be on a situation where I've memorized the whole set list, so I don't have to look at any of that stuff.
Right.
I can look around, I can catch a vibe, I can zone in on what's the bass player doing, or like what's the drummer's foot doing. Like I think it's important to be able to listen with both a completely open ear set, so you're hearing everybody on stage at the same time, which is kind of like the recording mindset where you're really focusing on the song and you're feeding the song. And that's really all the time. I think you need to be playing to the song. You need to be playing for the song. In a full band setting, you're just one piece of a very much larger puzzle. Depending on the size of the band, if you're in a piano trio, for example, you have to be a lot of the sound. But if you're playing in like an 8-piece band with a horn section, a couple singers, full rhythm section, you are one drum of many drums.
Yeah.
To use like the James Brown analogy or thought process, you're just part of the rhythm, and everything for the song. You got to feed the song. You got to play to the energy of the song. If you're playing a sad song, try to capture that feeling. If you're playing a up dancey song and you're not up and dancing, something's there's a disconnect there. I see a lot of pianists sitting down when they play. That's like a classic thing everybody does. I prefer to stand up because when I'm playing up dancey music, I got to be able to move. I got to be able to feel that vibe, feel the energy. And also eye contact is super important on stage. You got to be able to look around and see, okay, the drummer's about to do something. Let me go with him. Or who's taking the next solo, Or are those people in the back of the room just kind of like standing around talking? Are they bored? Are they dancing? Oh, they're dancing? Great, let's rock. You know what I mean?
Yeah. That kind of awareness, I think, can serve you really well.
Yeah. I think that comes
yeah.
with time,
Mm-hmm.
A lot of younger players will be very kind of closed in on their thing, and I'm sure I was too. And, it depends on what your energy is like that day. If you want to be kind of outgoing and musically talk and connect to people, or do you want to be kind of closed in and just like play some songs?
Yeah. Well, I had two thoughts while you were going.
Mm-hmm.
The first one was that it sounds like you're able to be in that space more in the moment, which I think is the goal, right?
I think so.
I think you're able to be there in those settings because you're comfortable with the material. So in that sense, practice is a tool for that kind of freedom.
Sure.
Right?
Sure.
So that's, I think, a great way to view practice as a way to get yourself closer to freedom and experiencing the music.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Because then it's internalized. It's just, at that point, you're just going out and doing what you do. It's the same thing as breathing or walking or, writing a letter. You just don't even really have to think about it too much.
Mm-hmm.
Just kind of look around and absorb and put back out into the universe.
Yeah. And then my other thought was that the things you're focused on are people dancing? What are the other people in the band doing? How am I connecting with them? What's the vibe like? And these seem like more quantitative results that you can actually see how they're happening, and you could, after the gig, say, yeah, that was at this level. Whereas when you're thinking about being good and performing well, that's completely subjective, and you're never going to be happy with that. And so I think by focusing on the things that you are focusing on, you're setting yourself up to be happier and to enjoy it more, because you can realistically say that, oh, I did accomplish that. You can have that sense of accomplishment. Where if you're just worried about sounding good, I don't know if you're ever going to get there.
Yeah. And I mean, also, it's not about you. It's not about me.
Yeah,
it's not about,
exactly.
It's not about any single musician. If it is, it's about the singer. It's the song. Like, did that song come off as the way the song should? Did that song sound good? Did it create the proper environment for that song? I think is the A1 most important thing.
Yeah.
And then once you focus in on that, I think it frees you up from the kind of anxieties and inward thinking that kind of can become claustrophobic in a way if you allow yourself to go down that tunnel.
For sure.
Which happens.
Yeah.
Especially on gigs when you're less comfortable. The more comfortable you are, the more you're able to kind of let your guard down and just play. And yeah, absolutely, practice has a lot to do with that. I really feel that bands that have at least a weekly rehearsal are more comfortable in their situation, and players who have kind of a daily routine of, I go through and I just run scales for 30 minutes every morning while I drink coffee, and I find that just opens my hands and minds in a way that allows me to turn off sort of the thinking, some parts of the thinking part of the brain during performance, because I feel confident and comfortable that my hands will do what I want them to do or tell them to do.
That's really cool.
But that's a lifelong pursuit, and I'm not fully there yet at all. I'm trying.
I like to hear that, though, that you're aware of the journey, and you're also aware that you're making progress, and that's great.
Oh yeah, I mean, look, if any of us think we're gonna retire from playing music, I think that's a fallacy. I think that's ridiculous. I can't imagine ever retiring from playing music. So the way I look at it is that it's a lifelong pursuit of finding, you know, happiness in it, and finding new ways to create music and new ways to express yourself on an instrument, which is really the point. And I doubt I'll ever be done learning or trying to get better. Yeah, New Orleans has been really good for me for learning new things and gaining a lot of hours on stage and experience, and just becoming more comfortable as that type of performer. And I'm back in school now as a grad student, trying to just expand my vocabulary more. The paper, the degree really doesn't mean a lot to me, but the experience of learning from masters how to do things that I'm not super comfortable with has been a really cool learning experience. And there's always another step to take. And if you think you've made it to the end, find a different pathway, find a different direction, different genre, a different ideology, a different scale that you've never thought of before, a different type of music. There's always something else out there. There's more music in the world than any of us will ever be able to fully comprehend in our lifetime.
Yeah, I think the fun is getting to as much of it as you can, right?
Yeah, I think so. In that sense, it's like a hoarding thing almost. You're gathering scraps of information from here, scraps of information from there. You're taking an idea from something like, one thing I studied a lot back in undergrad was Indian music and percussion in particular, and the way that they kind of formulate different patterns that can be additive or reductive. And like 4/4, forget about that. That's out the window anyway. You're thinking in odd time signatures. You're thinking about different ways of breaking down beats. And I think to apply that on the whole, any type of music can be broken down into very kind of specific ways that can be manipulated and changed by the musician. And finding the new ways to manipulate old songs can be a very interesting thing. But also, you gotta know exactly how the old song should be. Take an R&B tune, like something like a Muscle Shoals, or like a more New Orleans, like an Irma Thomas or an Alan Toussaint or Meters song. A lot of people play Meters songs and they will put a twist on them, they'll jazz them up, and that's cool. And then a lot of guys will take the Meters song and say, no, this is exactly what whatever instrument you're playing was doing on that song. This is how it should be. It should be played like this. And that's cool too. I think there's something to be said for nailing it, as well as finding creative ways to change it. Really depends on the setting and the type of gig. That took a turn.
That did. It's all good though.
Cool.
I like hearing that you're just a lifelong learner. Talking about New Orleans music and the scene here, you've been doing the working musician thing full time, pretty much on Frenchman, for like 4 years now. Mm-hmm. And I'm just curious, what, in your opinion, that lifestyle is like. What do you like and dislike about that scene?
Yeah. Well, let's see. The Frenchman scene, I started being kind of active on it about 4 years ago, and I started being really full time on it maybe 3 or so years ago. And it's been great for me. It's a really great group of people. I think New Orleans is a really unique place in that there's probably, I don't even know, maybe 400 or 500 kind of blue collar musicians who make it feel like there's music everywhere all the time in New Orleans. And there is, and it's because of people like us who are just playing all the time, with each other in different configurations, different settings, different venues. The hours are great. How can I really complain about a job that, it's not it can be a 40-hour. Actually, the hours are probably longer than 40 hours a week if I add in rehearsal time and practice time and getting to gigs and, taking apart pianos and fixing little things that are broken in them. And yeah, okay. I guess it does add up to being more than a full-time job probably. But that said, we're playing music for a living. We get to hang out and make people's asses move.
Yeah. Keep it all in perspective.
Yeah, exactly. And, it beats the other jobs that I've had. And I've had some fun jobs. I did construction for a while. I was a dodgeball coach for many years with little kids. And that was a blast too, but I found that to be more kind of going through the motions than music, because every gig is an opportunity to kind of really be expressive, and really, you're building a house, you do it this way, you do this, that way. On a gig, even if it's the same gig, you can play the same song, 50 times a year or more. I mean, shit, how many times have I played Valerie this month? Or, Kiss, or, there are standard tunes that you just play over and over again. And sometimes you get bored of them. But you can always find something to make it interesting, hopefully.
Yeah, you got to try at least, or you're going to get burnt out.
Oh, yeah. That's a real thing. And I've seen a lot of guys get burnt out, too. That's why I think variety comes back in. And,
yeah.
Getting to play in different situations. And, the Frenchman scene is great for that. It's a lot of brass bands. It's a lot of funk bands and jazz and, like, jazz fusion and neo-soul. Like, those are generally going to be the bulk of the gigs that there are. Blues bands, too. But occasionally you'll see a salsa band there or an Afrobeat band. They have this band now that's like an Ethiopian jazz band that's been really killing.
That's cool.
And I love going out on Frenchman and seeing what new band is playing, like what the homies are working on now, It's cool to bop around. I always try to get to my gigs a little early to walk up and down the block and see who's playing, see what kind of bands are happening right now.
I'm a little hung up thinking about what being a dodgeball coach looks like for little kids if you're out there teaching them like strategies or just the basic rules. I love the idea of you formulating plays for little kids.
It was less that I was like leading a team of little kids to like a state championship. That was not really happening. My job was, the way I saw the job was teaching kids how to be cool with each other through the medium of dodgeball. So, getting to understand that, the guy on the other team doesn't hate you. He's just trying to get you out. And you're trying to get him out too, or her out. And that's the game. And if you get hit and you weren't looking and you're surprised and you're hurt, or you think you're hurt, they're small softballs, but we're talking about little kids here. I was working with K through 2 for a year or two here. That ultimately it's a game and it's fun, and you have to understand that you're not actually injured. You're fine. That person is not gunning for you. They're on the other team and they're doing what they're supposed to be trying to do. And it's, I think, a way for kids to interact on a, competitive but also friendly level. And I think it's a shame that they took dodgeball out of a lot of school systems. I know that I was in high school in New York, and they pulled dodgeball from the elementary school curriculum because people were complaining about getting hurt. I thought that was a shame.
Yeah.
But also we were using much harder balls back then. We were using those like rubber, like super bouncy, like kickball balls.
Yeah.
And now they use these like gator skin balls that are foam with like a soft plastic coating, which like you can't actually get hurt by those. They bounce right off of you. So
yeah, and a 6-year-old can only throw so hard.
True.
That
It was
sounds like
fun.
a good time. No, that's amazing.
I recommend it. Try, if you're curious of what job to do, and especially if you're a musician that's not working a ton, like the hours at after school programs are kind of perfect for musicians. They start when school lets out at like 2 o'clock or so, and it'll be 3 or 4 hours of aftercare until their parents come pick them up. And then you have your evening to go play music, and you can stay out as late as you want. You can have a couple drinks after the gig or at the gig. And then you wake up the next day in the middle of the day. You go back to the after school. You throw a bunch of dodgeballs around with some kids, or maybe you teach them how to play football or soccer or, whatever. Maybe you're more into making puppets with them or putting on a show with them or just tutoring them. And then
Yeah, that does seem like a great side hustle.
I thought it was pretty good. It beat driving for Uber, I'll tell you that.
Ooh.
I did that for a little while, and that to me was much more tedious and not fun at all.
Mm-hmm. Well, I want to go pretty far back to something that you said that I wanted to go back to.
Sure.
And that was talking about the stress that you felt going out and meeting people when you were new to a scene.
Yeah.
And that's definitely the phase I'm in, and I feel like I have a lot of anxiety about that. It's hard to go meet people.
It's tough, man.
I'm curious, because I'm always worried about these people are, working full time. They don't want to meet me. Like, I don't want to be a bother. I don't want to be a nuisance. And I'd love to hear what your mentality and thought process is on the other end. As someone who is working full time, when you see a new musician coming in, a new face, what's going through your mind when they're coming up to you?
If it's someone that I've never seen before and they're coming up to, say, into the Super Jam, just up to the thing, I guess my thought process is, okay, let's see what this guy has or this girl has. Let's see how we can make whatever the next song is work in whatever way that we can. I'm kind of more focused on the song and figuring out what that's gonna be like and look like and sound like than who does this guy think he is. But then occasionally we get that. I think the biggest turnoff for me for a new musician getting on stage is the guy who thinks they're the shit. Hey, I played with this guy and that guy, and people who come up and they're just name dropping. To me, I could care less. Mm-hmm. Pick up your instrument and let's see what you can say. I think you really say as much or more with your instrument than you do with your words or your kind of your attitude, your anything like that. I think.
Well, so if someone, a new person coming in, and if they have a good attitude about it, mm-hmm. in your mind, they shouldn't really. They have no reason to be nervous about approaching you then as an older musician.
I would hope not.
Yeah.
I understand the anxiety of it for sure because I was definitely there too for a long time and still can be, if I get into a certain situation where I feel like a real outsider, nerves are real. Anxiety is real. But that said, once we all realize that it's just ego and it's just anxiety, you can identify it and you can move beyond it, I think. Hopefully. Mm-hmm. I love situations like the Super Jam because you get all these new musicians. It makes the same gig that we've been doing for over a year, or, Gene's been doing it for damn near 10 years now. Mm. It can make the same gig completely different on a night-to-night basis. And, sometimes we'll get somebody who's just a monstrous musician, and it's really enjoyable to play with them. And sometimes it's intimidating. And other times we'll get musicians that are just absolute garbage. And the name of the game in that situation is, let's see how good we can make this situation be.
Yeah.
Let's let's elevate that person to the top of their game, and let's find their strengths and find their weaknesses and play to their strengths.
I like that mentality, and I've always felt that way at that jam. It is, especially in comparison to a lot of jams I've been to, just very open and about including anyone regardless of talent, you know? And I do think that's important.
Yeah. I've been to jams that have been more cutting sessions, and those to me are less fun. Mm-hmm. It's more about showing off, and it's more about outplaying other people. And to me, that's really not the point of music. Like, if you're getting out there to be competitive with music, maybe that's what will fuel some people to become great. But to me, music's not a competition. It's a creative endeavor, and it's a form of communication. And it's like having a conversation with someone who just wants to tell you everything and not listen to anything. It's not a fun conversation to be a part of for
Absolutely.
Me. So I've definitely tended to avoid jam sessions on that basis because they can be real cutty, and I'm very grateful and a little bit surprised how not that this particular jam that we know and love so dear is.
Yeah. Well, one of the big goals of this podcast is to get people discussing mental health issues for musicians, because I think there's a lot of stigma about it, and a lot of musicians are reluctant to talk about it. And I think one of the goals is to make sure that everyone knows that we're all going through it, and we all have the issues that we face, and a lot of them are the same ones that we're all dealing with. And I am curious if there are any ones in particular that you've struggled with over the years that you have dealt with, or that you're making progress on, that you think would be valuable to share with people.
Yeah, I mean, well, the anxiety of thinking, am I good enough, is always I think everybody goes through that at different points, different times, and to different degrees, for sure. I don't see that as a mental health issue. I'd see that as just like a humanity. You know, everybody has their reasons for feeling more or less competent on a certain situation, but it's just something that everyone's got to work through. I've found music to be kind of the only thing that pulled me out of real depression. You know, I dealt with a very sudden death of my partner, and music was the only reason I'd leave the house for a good year. Like, pretty much I would only go out of the house to go to work, to go to play music, and it was kind of all I had for a while. And it really kind of saved me. If I had had a more regular job, I think I would have been in a much darker place for a much longer time. It allowed me to get out. It allowed me to be social while also not having to say anything, really. I was able to just let my music do all the talking. You know, it was a good year of not wanting to deal with anything, talk with anybody. You know, it's hard to cope with that kind of stuff. But in the end, I think it was music that saved me, and also I was able to put those emotions into a lot of the music and kind of deal with it that way, and also consider that music is an interconnecting thing where you're playing sound for everybody in the room, but you're also playing for kind of this like higher, I don't know, not to get too like spiritual or hippy dippy about it, but you're kind of playing for a higher purpose sometimes. Like, even if there's nobody in the room, and if you're playing music that's really lifting your own souls, you're feeling there can be a feeling of like unity with the universe, even, that I found to be kind of a healing thing for me. I was able to connect more with vibrations, nature, weather patterns, stuff as kind of non-musical or non-human as all of that. I think at its best, music is a healing or a positive force. Just creating sound alone can be very healing. And, when cats fall, if they don't land on their feet, they will purr their body. They will just purr in a ball for a little while until they're healed, like whatever bruise or thing. I think that's true. I might have just made that up.
We'll fact check that one. No, I really agree with that. And I'm curious if, since finding that deeper connection, is experiencing that connection with something bigger than yourself during music, is that a goal that you, or something that you're trying to reach when you go to play regularly? Or is that something you're trying to find all the time?
Oh, if you're in the right mindset, it's possible to even think about that. There are situations where you don't have the time or energy or the ability on the course of a set to be able to zone into that kind of plane of existence, plane of thinking. But that's an ideal for sure. That's, to me, is one of the many goals of music, is to tap into something higher, tap into something bigger than yourself, bigger than the band, bigger than any body or anything. It's just kind of this massive feeling of everything. I don't know, the God particle or the...
Yeah, I guess in my mind that's just being completely in the moment, right? Connected to everything. And are there any things in particular that you have found that have helped you get to that space?
Luck? I don't know. I don't know. I think just kind of allowing yourself to get into that space is the only way to get there.
Maybe letting go.
Yeah, letting go of different hang-ups, anxieties. If that means, having an extra drink to get yourself to stop thinking about, how I had this experience the other night. There was a wall of horn players in front of me, all big dudes, and I couldn't see anybody in the crowd. I knew that we had a good crowd in the house, but I couldn't see anybody. So I was having this kind of like mental thing that I was going through where I was like, I can't pick up energy from anybody. All I can do is pretty much see the drummer and bassist and maybe like occasionally the singer if they would turn around. But I felt very disconnected from the room at a whole. So I took a break. I took like a quick walk around, got myself a beer, and I said, you know what? Let's just play the music. And I was able to kind of, sometimes it takes stepping aside for a second to get your mind right and say, you know what? None of that matters. Like it doesn't matter if I can pick up on the energy of all the people dancing down there. I don't need that. I can just hear the music, and we're just going to play the music. And, you can start to kind of think about it as a recording process, which would be like, what's the perfect thing to play right now? Or what's the best thing that I can offer to the song right now? Does that answer the question?
Yeah, those seem like great approaches to, if you're frustrated, take a step back and refocus on something that you can control.
Right.
So that's going to bring us to our Coda question segment, which is rapid fire, short answer responses before we take the Coda and get on out of here. The first one being, what's your go-to feel-good album?
My go-to feel-good album, Bob Marley, Positive Vibration.
Yeah, awesome. And what's the best advice you've ever received about being happy?
About being happy? You make your own happiness. Don't rely on anything or anybody to make it for you.
Who's the happiest musician you know?
The happiest musician I know. I know a lot of happy musicians. We get to play music. That's the happiest musician I know. I don't know, everybody. Not everybody.
Well, if you can't name one, then I feel like you're in a good circle of people.
Yeah, I don't think I could single out one person as being more happy than other people. And also, you don't really know how happy other people are, because some people hide behind happiness or hide behind kind of a stoic face when actually they are happy. I don't know. It's a tough question. I'll think about that.
Okay. Well, what one piece of advice would you give to a young musician who's just starting their career?
Play as much as you can. Try not to be too intimidated by other musicians. Just, be yourself. Play to the best of your abilities and practice, but also get as much real life experience as you can. If you can't find a band to join, start a band, and always shoot for higher things.
Cool. And then what is your purpose as a musician?
My purpose as a musician is to bring happiness and bring good music into people's lives, and hopefully leave a legacy of things that have been recorded so I can become immortal.
Cool.
Because when we die, if we have recordings, we live on forever, in a way.
Yeah. Awesome, man. Thanks so much for joining us.
Oh, man, thanks for having me. This was fun.
Yeah, I really enjoyed it.
I hope it was a helpful conversation.
Yeah, well, and I think it definitely was. I learned a lot. And I'll give you a minute here if you'd like to plug any projects or things you got coming up, anything you'd like to share, let people know about, where they can find you, things they should check out.
Yeah, if you're down on Frenchman Street, I'll be there almost every night, playing various clubs with Gene's Music Machine, or the New Orleans Super Jam, Dysfunctional Bone, Margie Perez. Man, I'm definitely forgetting some stuff. Luscious Duchess. Go check out Moments of Truth at the BMC too. I used to play with them. I don't do it so much anymore, but I love those dudes. They might be some of the happier musicians I know. They have a good time.
They've got their 3 pillars worked out.
At least 2 of them.
At least 2 of them.
And I'll have another gold standard record coming out eventually, as soon as it's done. And you can check out the old stuff on the internet, either at the Gold Standard, on Spotify, or Jupitang if you want to check out some real old stuff, or Buru Style, one of my favorite old bands. It's a reggae funk band that I think the records still hold up. So there's music out there. You can check out my website, jakegoldmusic.com. Listen to it there. I don't know, enough plugging.
Yeah.
Go play some music. Go listen to some music.
All right, that does it for this week's episode of the Happy Musicians Podcast. I looked it up, and it turns out cats do in fact purr themselves back to health, and studies are being done to see if humans can benefit from cat purring as well. Right now we're listening to Pope Job, a Jake Gold original off a Jupitang album entitled When We Got Together. Thanks so much for listening, y'all. If you wouldn't mind hitting that subscribe button, give us a rating, maybe even go that extra mile, give us a review on Apple Podcasts. That all goes a long way in helping us spread the message. Thanks so much for your time and your attention, and stay happy.